Okay. As you recall, in this course, we've so far dealt with the history of international politics, international law, and then diplomacy. And through those three subjects, we've looked a little bit at international organizations as well as in the international economy as well. And today's topic, which is globalization, has a close link to all of those other topics. Today I'm going to look into globalization. It used to be my own theme for research. It's going to be rather theoretical. グローバル化について結構理論的な話を今日は申し上げます。皆さん結構ね、これ抽象的で、一部むしろ哲学的な内容っていうふうに感じると思うんですけどね。まあ、覚えてもらうこと何もありません、ほとんどね。ただ、こうちょっと考えてもらうための授業です。だから頭の体操だと思って聞いてください。So it's going to be more a mental exercise kind of class rather than asking you to memorize anything at all. Okay. So we screen share this. グローバル化っていう言葉ですね。意味をちょっと考えてみたいと思うんですね。それで、英語ではね、so this is globalization in English. This concept is probably more ambiguous than anything else we've seen in this class so far. I think you all have your own image, vague sense of what it means. But actually, many people are not very clear in their mind what they exactly mean by saying globalization. You remember this parable from India, old ancient India. 5, 6 blind scholars looking into a big creature, which is the elephant. Nobody has an overall idea of what it looks like. And globalization is another concept, which is typically like this elephant, okay? Almost everybody these days, we mention the word, mainly in introductory statements, I suppose. I suppose the other teachers do that too. よく言うのはね、この象の例え以外にもね、スーツケース言葉って言葉、皆さん知ってます？ It's also like, if you like a suitcase, you put your stuff into suitcases, as you like. Everyone puts in different things. Of course, many people put in the usual items, your pants, your shirts, and all that. But everyone's basically free to, mention a suitcase with whatever content you have in mind. So it's the word. It's some people say it's like a suitcase word. My question to you now is, when about do you think this word globalization started to be used by people? グローバル化、グローバリゼーションという言葉って皆さん大体もう物心ついた頃から聞いてたと思うんですけど、そもそも世の中でいつ頃から使われ始めたと思います？3つ選択肢ありますから、手を挙げて直感的に答えてくださいね。10年前か30年前か100年前か、どれだと思います？ 10 年前ぐらい前だと思う人。今いないですかね。30年ぐらい前だと思う人。Which of you think it's about 30 years ago? Justin, I see you're getting to hear your Japanese. Yeah, very good. Who thinks it was about 100 years ago? Not very many. Okay, so the answer is most of you got it right. 大体30年ぐらい前。一般に使われ出したのも、それから学者たちがね、この言葉を割とこう真面目にコンセプトで取り上げ始めたのは、大体3、40年前ぐらいですかね。ただ、いろんな人はもういろんな意味で使ってきてるんですね。で、ここでもう一度復習ですけど、so just to recap the usual diagram I show you, where is globalization? It's one of the three plays that I mentioned. But I think you all feel that compared to the other three main plays in this diagram, politics and economy, international, it's a rather different concept, isn't it? なんか他の2つの劇と比べたら、ちょっと異質ですよね。直感的にそう思いますでしょう。何が違うんだろうとちょっと考えてみたら、実は役に立つんですけどね、何が違うと思います他の2つ、国際政治と国際経済と、それからグローバル化って何が本質的に違うんだろう。ちょっと考えてみて。で、これ、例えば、誰かな。Jocelyn, what's your feeling about the difference between the two other plays and this play, globalization? There's a fundamental difference.
Does globalization have to do with like both international politics and economy?
Yeah,
whereas the other two are separate?
Yeah, that's good. It's at the same time separate, and it has a lot to do with the other two. They're closely related. You're very right in that sense. But still, the question remains. But what's the fundamental difference as a concept as opposed to the other two main plays? 誰かもう一人誰か答えてみてくれます？北村さん、なんか思うとこないですか？本質的な違い。なんだろう。
あ、できた。
はいはい。
本質的な違いですか？
はい。ちょっと難しいかな。
難しいです。
主役は誰かっていうふうに考えてみたらどう？確か1回目の授業でちょっとやったんですけど、国際経済、国際主役は誰か、それからグローバル化のじゃあ主役は誰だろうって。そこになんか違いはないですか？
グローバル化の主役
うん、そう。
いや、難しく考えすぎてる気がします。
うん。これ3つとももちろんね、これ国際社会に関係することで、国際社会ということは、我々人間が構成してますよね。国家がまずあるんだけど、究極的にはたくさんの人の集まりで、こう全部ね、すごいなんかそもそも論ですけども、人の意思が働いてますよね。政治とか経済とか。当たり前ですけど、国家にしても企業にしても人にしてもね、なんか目的意識持って意思決定をして実行しているわけですよ。行為ですよね。それがもうたくさん集まった集積だなんだけど、政治も経済もね。グローバル化ってしかし同じようにそういうこと言えますかね。そこなんですよ。I mean, all of these are acts of, us, our own action. Human beings are involved in all of these things. It's a conscious act, or a huge, amalgamation of countless numbers of some kind of social activity, if you like, both in politics and economics. But globalization has, it's something slightly different in that. Now, in order to understand this further, I have another question to you. This question, 国際化とグローバル化って両方の言葉よく使いますよね。同じことでしょうかね、概念的に。すごく違うと思うか。What's your own answer to this fundamental question? Both of these two words I think are very often used. I think, in Japan, I think the word kokusaika, internationalization, tends to be used a lot. I think that's also true to an extent in the other countries. I'm not sure. Bruno, what's your sense? Is Bruno here this morning? No.
Yes, but I missed the first like 5 minutes.
Well, you just want to focus on this question.
Okay.
Yeah, in your mind, are these two words basically the same, or do they mean different things?
I think it can be slightly different. I mean, in my opinion, if I read these two words, the meaning is different. Like it's like internationalization.
Yeah.
Sounds to me more like how how can I explain, like being integrated, why globalization looks like more wide in
Right. Internationalization is being integrated. I think, yeah, that's yeah, a good definition. Somebody being integrated into, things into international, maybe.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a verb, isn't it? Basically, it's an active notion. It's about somebody or a country or whoever, an agent who gets more used to or gets itself integrated into the international society, things like that. I think that sense is shared by many. I don't know, but does the word globalization have the same sense? 皆さんどうですかね。国際化っていうと、なんかこう、能動的な概念ですよね。国にしても企業にしても我々皆さんにしてもね、もっと国際的な活動をするとかね、英語を勉強するとか、要するに国際化するっていう、なんかこういう概念っていうんですかね。というふうに活用する人多いと思うんですね。僕もそうなんですけど、でもグローバル化って同じ意味ですかね。同じ意味だと思って大体使ってる人います？全然恥ずかしくないんですよ。違う意味で使ってます？ちょっとそこを考えてほしいんです。で、これ別に皆さんそれぞれ自分で決めたらいいんですよ。同じ意味で使ったらそれでいいんです。で、現に日本では同じ意味で使っちゃってる人多いんですよね。福井大学の学長さんの上田さんもそんな意味で使ってますよ。だけど、これね、グローバル化の、なんていうか、きちっとした学術的ななんていうか、問題としてはね、かなり違う意味で普通使われます。で、何かっていうと、グローバル化っていうのは、我々自身の行為を示す言葉では普通はないんですよね。わかります？グローバル化するっていうのはおかしいんですよ、そういう意味じゃ。行為概念じゃなくて、グローバル化が起きてるんですよね。そうするとなんとなくピンときません？グローバル化って我々が何かする行為じゃないんですよ。あるいは人とか国が何かグローバル化する、国際化するっていうのと、そういう同じ意味で使ったら、ちょっとね、おかしいと僕は、そうじゃなくて、なんか起きてることなんですよね。現象と言ってもいいですね。それと、でもっと正式にはね、プロセスなんですよね、プロセス。My understanding of the term globalization is not an action by people or nations. It's a process. It's a huge global process, or phenomena, if you like, phenomenon. And you see the sense, and that's the way I will introduce this concept to you today. Okay. Now it's a bit tricky here because if you come to think of it, what we see as the process of globalization is, after all, if you dig into it, after all, it consists of many countless numbers of human action and action by states and all the other actors. But still, it's so huge that I think it becomes very difficult to look at it as an active, proactive concept, if you follow what I'm saying. Okay. Right. Now let's look at what the experts are saying about this. All right. The scholars. And this is just, I just drew this from a well-known book, I think. It's an introductory book titled What is Globalization? It's by Manfred Steger. He's in his 50s now. He's a guru in the field of global studies. And he quotes other famous scholars or experts in the field as to how each of them defines globalization. And you can see, I'm not going to ask you to read all this right now. It's just to show you everybody have different definitions. And I'll just make a quote. But well, the first example is a very famous sociologist, Anthony Giddens, but I won't dwell with that. I just wanted to highlight one of the other definitions by Roland Robertson, another rather well-known scholar. He's getting old now, and in globalization. And his definition is this. Yeah, you can read it for yourself. Globalization as a concept refers both in the compression of the world and the intensification of consciousness. Now, Steger quotes Rodden Robinson rather frequently, and he presents his own definition here. It's like a sort of a integrated summary of all the other definitions, and this is far from all, this is just showing 4 or 5 of the many definitions there are. Globalization refers to the expansion and intensification of social relations and consciousness across world time and world space. It's about growing worldwide interconnectivity. And I mean, that's a fairly standard definition by a global studies scholar. Okay. We'll come back to these 2 experts later on. Now, what am I going to say now? Right. Now that's the book. You'll easily find it in the library by the small booklet. It's a primer, and I actually I just wanted to show this to you. So I had the privilege and the pleasure to meet Manfred Steger. This was about four years ago, I think it was. It was in Hawaii because he's a professor at the Hawaii University more recently, and this is a book that I more or less authored and edited more than 20 years ago, and I'm not showing this to you to boast or anything like that, but just to show you an example of one of thousands and thousands of books about globalization, which used to be, they're still coming out, but the concept was sort of in a vogue. It was a buzzword more than now, 20, 30 years ago. And I was a researcher at the time. I was on secondment to an institute from the foreign ministry. And I sort of gathered together a study group and put out this book. And it was about other things, new image of the world, but I came up in my youthful vigor, my own definition of globalization. And the point about this is, I'm not going to ask you to read this. It's in the library, but I don't recommend it to you. You know why? Because my own definition has changed over the years. And but just to let you know, the nature of the concept, even the same person's own definition shifts over the years. Okay. And I won't go into this right now, what was my definition 20 years ago. But I would say in that sort of time, 1990s, 2000s, thousands and thousands of scholars around the world have written books, dissertations, monographs on globalization. Okay. And so I'm going to go a little bit further into how my own image of globalization, right? Some salient features of globalization. 主な特徴ですね. Now, this is where it gets a bit abstract, so bear with me. First is 不可避性, inevitability. What do we mean by that? さっき言いましたようにね、ものすごく世界大の社会変化のプロセスなんですよね。変化のプロセス。で、それってね、ちゃんとこう一つ一つ噛み砕いていけば、社会的な人間の活動がベースですよね。所詮ね。自然の動物の活動とかあんまり関係ないけど、人間がやってること無限の集積なんですけど、でももう全体としては政治とか経済みたいに我々の意思が働いてるっていうふうにもういかない、とてももうあまりコントロールが効かない、なんていうか不可避的な、もう不可逆な現象っていうふうに僕は捉えられると思うんですね。So overall, as the overall process, the global process, globalization is more or less unstoppable. Manageable, it's still manageable to an extent, but on the whole, it's it's out of control. So it's beyond our human ability to control it overall. Okay, parts of it are of course manageable, right? So overall, it's irreversible, I would say, as well as inevitable, right? Now, the second important feature, and this is what Manfred Steger, he particularly emphasizes it, is transdisciplinarity. 学際性ですね。まあ、皆さん学際性って言葉はね、この学部では聞くことあると思いますけど、まあ、要するに、一つの学問分野、ね、だけ一生懸命やると専門家になるっていうのも大事ですけど、やっぱり物事は広く考えて、学問的にもね、いろんな学問ディシプリンって言いますけどね、領域から一つのテーマを多角的に見ることが大事なんですっていう、そういう意味ですよね。So I hope you have a sense of the notion transdisciplinarity. It's important to look at any subject, but particularly as large a subject as this, globalization, it's very important to look at it from various points of view, from various disciplines. And that can range from political science, economics, sociology in particular, even geology, anthropology, archaeology, even linguistics, psychology, and finally philosophy even, okay? But all of that put together, actually, there is one new, if you like, a new area of study which is evolving these last 10, 20 years, and that's called the area of global studies. And Manfred Steger, whom I introduced to you, is kind of the leading scholar in that broad area, right? Now, in terms of transdisciplinarity, there's another concept which evolves from here, and that is 文化進化っていう言葉、ちょっと皆さん念頭に置いてってくださいね。It's cultural evolution. And it may sound odd to you. Why does culture come up in this context? We're talking of culture in the very broad sense. We're not just talking about culture in the the narrow sense, music, historical artifacts, literature and things like that, temples and shrines and all that. That's culture in the very narrow sense. We're talking about culture as more or less encompassing, covering all human activity, if you like, which is anything to do with social human existence. そういう意味で、ものすごく何でもありのコンセプトなんですけどね、文化進化っていうふうに見る見方があります。で、これとてもグローバル化にも関係してくるんです。それだけちょっと念頭に置いておいてください。はい。で、それこそね、文化とは言いますけど、政治制度とか経済的なこと、何でも入ってきますよ、これは。要は、人間社会全体を長い間にだんだん進化していくんだと。ちょっと生物の進化にも構造的に実は似てるんですけどね。そういうふうに捉えます。大きく進化してる。そうするとね、グローバル化っていうのもそれに重なってくるんですよね。ということで、次に必然的につながるんですけど、長い時間軸で考えていく必要があります。So the time dimension is very key to globalization as well as cultural evolution. These are things which occur over a time, right? Okay. Now, my next question to you is, so if we're looking at globalization as a process which has evolved over time, how long, what is the time frame that we are looking at? Okay. グローバル化って言葉が使われ始めたのは大体3、40年前からってさっき言いましたけど、でもそうじゃなくて、言葉じゃなくてグローバル化っていうこの今見てる、もっとちゃんと本来の現象ですね、プロセス。それ自体が始まったのはじゃあどれぐらい前か。で、これも3つ選択肢あげますね。手を挙げてください。やっぱり30年ぐらい前っていうのは1番。それから100年ぐらい前っていうのが2番ですね。3番目は300年ぐらい前。4番目もありましたね。4番目はもっと前ですね。1番の30年ぐらい前だと思う人います？手を挙げてください。ちょっと今皆さんの顔全部見えないんですけど、何人かいますか？それから100年ぐらい前だと思う人。Who thinks the process itself evolved from about 100 years ago? 何人か。300年前だと思う人。あんまりいませんか？そしたら最後の400、もっともっと前だと思う人。誰かいません？ はい。正解はもっともっと前なんです。それでね、まあ無理ないです。皆さん、と思うでしょ。そんな昔ってね、っていうのは最近言葉を使われ始めたし、まあ顕著に進んでるのは最近ですね、ここ数十年。なぜかっていうと、多分ね、グローバル化って言ったら、経済的なグローバル化を念頭に置く人が多いですからね。特に IT 革命その他でね、国際交流がものすごく緊密化してっていう、それはもう最近顕著になってきた。だからそれにグローバル化を結びつけて考える人が多いんだけど、本来は、コンセプトとしてはもっともっと古くからと言われてます。それで、学者によるんですけどね、これ、僕が作った年表なんですけど、グローバル化って一体いつから始まったんだろうかと。And Jocelyn and Bruno, don't worry, I have the English version too. 皆さん日本語ざっと見ておいてください。何を言ってるか。まあ人類がそもそもアフリカから出た時なんていうのが一番、ある意味一つの最初の出来事なんですけどね。英語の方行きますね。Okay, so that's the English. So it depends on, different experts have different ideas about when it actually started. But I think some people think as long as, since time immemorial, since recorded time. And we human beings, Homo sapiens, exited Africa. Well, how many years ago was that? Several million years ago. And the point about this chart, which is very, very, abstract, it's not, although the time scale is on a logarithmic scale, but nothing is very exact. It's this red line. これ非常に、ただグローバル化が進展してきたことをもう乱暴に一つの線でただ描いてるだけなんですけど、特徴わかりますよね。What's the main feature of this red line? It's just an image of how globalization has evolved over the years. First thing is it's not straight. it's a curve, isn't it? だから最近になるほど加速化してるんですよね。So first of all, it's curving a lot, which means it has accelerated over the years, and right now it's accelerating as hell, right? And the other thing is it's not a smooth curve either. It's been through, what's the word? Leaps and bounces or bounds. What's the word? ボコボコしてますよね。っていうのは、まあ、時々ものすごく大きな、変化が起きたら、まあ、例えば農業が出てきたとかね、産業革命が起きたとか、最初に人類が車を使い始めたとか、そういうもうとてつもなく大きな社会変化の時には、ボンとか進むんですよね。で、しばらく大きな変化がないと、ちょっと平らな変化の乏しい時代が続くと。まあ、そんなイメージですね、グローバル化の。はい。まあ、これ、細かいところご安心あったら、後で資料をウェブクラスに載せますんでね。一番最近、まあ、これ、ね、コロナ禍なんていうのも、これに匹敵するような大きな動きだったなんて言ってた人もいましたけど、あるいは分かんない。今、AI 革命が進んでましてね、そのうちAI が人間を凌駕するっていうようなことも、もうみんな言い始めてて、それも大きな変化の一つになるかもしれませんね。And so probably the next big event, which is worth putting in this chart, this time frame, it might be the singularity, which people are starting to argue, which may occur in a few decades, where artificial intelligence will replace us human beings and take charge of the world, something like that. Nobody knows what would actually happen. But the point here is, and I tend to, associate myself with this kind of view that it's been happening for a very, very long time. Okay, so that's the time dimension. The next dimension is space. Okay, and this is more important even for our course's purpose. There's the 空間軸ですね. And this is where the other notion, 時間軸はまあ since time immemorial ですけど、空間軸はね、を考えるとグローバル化という概念が出てくるんです。 グローカル化って言葉、so now we come to the notion of globalization, which is, of course, a mix of, it's a combined word, globalization and localization. Lin-san, have you heard of are you familiar with this word, localization? Have you heard of it? 皆さん知ってますよね。大島さん知ってますよね。学部生の皆さん知ってるでしょ、グローカル化。知らない人います？Bruno, are you familiar with the term globalization? If
With
not,
globalization?
no, it's an offspring from, it's another concept. It came out of globalization, but it's a combination of globalization and localization.
Yeah, actually, I heard about it because
You heard
actually
about it.
here in Fukui, I started to hear it because I'm taking intercultural communication class,
Okay.
and these words like comes up very often.
Okay,
And
that's right.
yeah.
I'd like to show you a video. 皆さんこれ見たことある人もいるかもしれませんけどもね。ちょっと待ってください。別の共有、画面の、ちょっと待ってください。どう変えるんだろう。新しい共有。10秒ぐらいね、あるビデオを見せて、これ見たことある人います？これ、うちの学部のプロモビデオです。1回の留学生に説明したんですけどね。Okay, so you see the keyword local is used as a word to promote our own school, GCS. You see, so I'm just going back to the main PowerPoint. とても大事なコンセプトなんですよ。特に福井のような地域ね、それから福井大学国際教育学部にとっても、これ要するにグローバルとローカルな地域のことを結びつけると、もう関係が深まってるから分かりますよね。We're coming to the linkage or the connection or the nexus, if you like, between global matters, global issues, and local, issues of community issues and all that. And that's what our school is all about, actually. This promo video, I'll give you the link. Two of our former foreign students will discuss things in the 5-6 minute video. It's still there's still a link at the bottom of our web page. Okay. Why I'm showing you this is because I want to go into a little bit about this new offshoot, localization, because again, I met the person who actually first conceived of this word, the scholar who first started present this new concept. And that was about 40 years ago, 30, 40 years ago now. The term localization was first used by a serious, a scholarly context by Roland Robertson. You saw his name already in the list of several scholars. Manfred Steger listed. He was a British American scholar. I think he's getting on very much in age. But I also had the privilege of meeting him 5 years ago, and this is his seminal work. 1992年ぐらい、だいぶ前の本ですけどね、グローバル化についての代表的な著作の一つです。で、彼がこの本の中でね、it was in this book about globalization. It's a well-known book, rather theoretical, but he first introduced the new concept of localization in this book. And, nobody took it seriously at the time. I think many people thought he was crazy. It sounded so odd, but he was very serious about it. And where he got this idea was actually from this notion of dochakuka. He told me himself, and he also explains it in the book. 土着化って日本語ですよね。 で、ロバーツの先生ってとても日本が好きな人でね、この日本語、土着化っていう言葉から、グローカル化っていう新しい概念を思いついたっていうんですよ。で、これとても面白い話なんで、もっと今日時間取れればいいんですけど、簡単に言うと、何でもいいんですけどね、この文化的なことでもいいし、政治的、経済的なことでもいいんですけども、日本中に例えばあるもの何か一つ考えて、日本中どこ行ったってお米作ってますよね。俺は日本人お米食べるから。we Japanese, we all eat a lot of rice. So rice is harvested throughout the country. But when you come to see it, rice in Fukui, made here is slightly different from rice made in even the next prefecture, Ishikawa-ken. So each region or each locality has its own brand of whatever people eat or use or produce around the country or even around the world. Many things can be the same all over the world, but there are local, differences or slight nuances, variations, if you like. And to adopt and, to change and improve on something which is more or less uniform throughout the country, to your own local tradition or to your own local taste, adapting things. That's one sense of the word dochakuka. And Roland focused on this notion. And from that, he came up with the new word, localization. And since then, it's already 40, this is in 1992, so it's already like 30 years. And the concept has become very widespread since then. And many other scholars are taking it seriously now. He actually was kind enough to come over to Fukui. This is from 4 years ago, 2019. And he gave a lecture at Fukui University, right? Okay, actually a video recording of that lecture is available in one of our websites. I'll give you the link later on. So we come back to this chart table. That's localization. And we now want to look at what are the impacts of globalization. Right. Now, many people say, I think you've heard this mentioned, there is the upside and the downsides to globalization. Many people still look at it as a very beneficial process overall, but it does have its downsides. Some people are very critical about globalization. They tend to focus on what are the negative effects. 光と影とよく昔から言われてます。それで、ここでちょっとね、これ皆さんもう少し考えてほしいところなんですけど、総じてグローバル化っていいのか悪いのかと。もう簡単に言っちゃいます。総じてですね、もうとても巨大なテーマなんですけど、いい面も悪い面ももちろん両方あって複雑なんですけど、全体としてじゃあいいのか悪いのかこうね、人によって見方が違うんですよ。I want you to, look into this question. Overall, is it good or bad? Right? Because you're going to have a debate. I think you guessed it now. All right. Now, the other very big question, 全然違う視点ですけども、じゃあグローバル化が進む中で世界はより確一化しているのか、逆に多様化しているかっていうことはよく議論されます。これちょっと若干学会的な質問ですけどね。でも皆さんもっとそんな抽象的な議論ではなくて、具体的に今世界で起きている皆さんの身の回り、あるいは世界中で起きていることも見聞きしていると思いますけど、全体として確率化、要するにいろんなものが一緒になってきている世界中っていう簡単に言いますとね、あるいはそうじゃないけども、そういう面も確かにあるけれども、いやでもさっき言った土着化じゃないんですけどね、同じものであるけども、いや地域ごとにちょっとずつ違うとね、日本中どこでも同じお米を食べてるといえば同じなんですけど、少しずつ違うじゃないですかと。 ね、コシヒカリと何あれ、何でしたっけ、もう一つ。やっぱりね、分かる人は違いありますよね。日本中お酒、どこでもみんなお酒作ってるけど、みんな違う。ね、フランスはフランス中でワイン作ってますけども、一つ一つ全部違う。だからそれ、同じと言ってもいいし、全部違うんだと多様化してる逆に。で、違いがさらに出てきてるっていう面も、よく考えていろんな例があると思うんですね。これ2番目の問いです。Okay, that's the second main question about globalization. Does it lead to more sameness or difference? This binary notion of sameness versus difference, この2つの対立する概念ですね。これいろんな言い方あるんですよ。ちょっとね、なんか言葉のあれで語義の問題であれですけど、ここだけちょっと付き合ってくださいね。確一化、あるいは確一性ね。確一化はまあ、動詞ですね。確一性って名詞ですけど、それに対応する言葉は多様化あるいは多様性。それが大体同じ意味なんですけどね、普遍化、普遍性、あるいは個別化、個別性っていう言葉も、こういうの学問的にはよく使います。So in English, those are either homogenization versus heterogenization. I don't think these words are used very daily, but it's becoming a bit academic. Sorry for that. But I think the more familiar words are uniformity versus diversity. Diversity is a very important concept. And there's also the terms universality against particularity. And for simplicity's sake, you could consider more or less all of these words on the first line and those words on the second line as meaning the same thing. まあ、あんまり難しく考えない。でも、その、普遍化、個別化、あるいはユニバーサリティ、パティキュラリティって言葉、ちょっと念頭に置いておいてください。はい。で、ここでね、ちょっと、ここだけ少し難しくなります。ロランド・ロバーツソンのグローバル化の定義をご紹介したいんです。で、彼ももういろんな言い方、その時によってしてましてね、簡単な定義っていうのはもう単純に世界がただ一つになってきてますねと。これ直感的に皆さん分かりますよね。一つになってきてるっていうのは、まあもちろん交流が増えてて、物も人も情報も行き交ってて、それのみならず、彼はその人の心の中のことをとても大事に考える人で、みんなその世界中のどこに住んでるどんな人も、なんとなく自分は今こういう一体化している世界の一員だという意識、なんか意識の共通化も進んでいるというふうにも考えてますね。で、これをものすごくややこしく難しくこんな言い方してましてね、個別性の普遍化と普遍性の個別化とが相互浸透する巨大な二重のプロセスと。So that's in English. He gave this very difficult definition. The massive twofold process involving the interpenetration of the universalization of particularism and the particularization of universalism. So I think you have no idea what he means by this. And I'm not going to spend time dwelling on this now, but that's what he says. And I mean, if you're interested, there's a dissertation, a paper that I wrote about this concept, but I'll show you the link if you're interested later on. で、この議論の延長として、彼は結局そのグローバル化っていうのは突き詰めてもっとちゃんと洗練した概念として定義し直せばグローバル化そのものなんだと、グローバル化イコールグローバル化だとまで言ってます。So, you know, the end result of his kind of thinking about globalization and the offshoot concept of localization, he actually equates the two concepts. Those two are the same things in his mind. Localization as a concept is is globalization redefined, as well as it's a more refined concept of the same thing. That's what he says. All right, just for your information. Okay, and so now we're coming. Now I think you're rather lost here. これ具体的に分かりにくいですよね。And I couldn't, you know, I had no idea what he meant when I first read the book. But I thought about it over and over again, and I came up with this particular example. 具体例は何だろうかってずっと考えましてね。で、これは僕は適当に考えたことなんですけど、 ハンバーガーって皆さんなんか変なものを持ち出したなと思われてると思うんですが、これ意外に社会学者の間で大事な具体例なんです。The historical evolution of the hamburger is actually not my own invention. It's a theme, it's a case study of a very important nature in sociology. And I'll just go through it quickly for you. I'm just using some pictures. Okay. Now, where do you think the first hamburger outlet from McDonald's came out? Jocelyn, do you have any idea? Well, you're already seeing this picture. This was the first McDonald's shop. When do you think this, when and where do you think this was? 誰かわかります? Well, I suppose you don't know, but this was, I think, let me see, I think it was 1940, so almost 80 years ago now. I think it was somewhere in Kansas. Anyway, now the point is, not whether it was in which state it was, but that it came from a rather smallish locality. You know, it was not from New York or Los Angeles. It was in a rather small town. I think it was in California. Yeah, it was in a town called San Bernardino in California. And so it was a smallish town. And but then it evolved. Now this other picture, Jocelyn, have you heard of the hamburger chain called White Castle? Yeah. And actually, McDonald's was not the first hamburger chain. There was this White Castle from before. I think it preceded McDonald's by even 20 years or so. But of course, you know, I remember when I was a kid living in New York, we had White Castle already. We didn't have McDonald's yet. But of course, McDonald's became more dominant after that. And this picture in color is the McDonald's shop in the first one in Japan. Guess where this was and when it was? Anybody have an idea? 日本のマクドナルド第1号店。で、これね、実は僕が皆さんのぐらいの年だった時に行きました。で、東京の銀座のね、4丁目にはできたんですわ。1971年ですね、これができたのね。だからこれ分かるでしょ。なんでこんなことをご説明するかというと、これ一つの典型的な、今や世界中のリーディング企業ですよね、チェーン店としての。それが最初はどこにできたのか、それから日本にまで進出してきたのはいつだったかっていう、これグローバル化してるわけですね。マクドナルドっていう新しい形態のお店がね、レストランですよね。で、だから最初はなんかアメリカのちっちゃな田舎町で初めてできたものがもうとてもローカルなものだったわけですよ。ね。ところがそれがね、ものすごくヒットして世界に広まっていったと。もう今やもうグローバルなものになってきた。それが71年にもう早速日本にできた。で、次にお見せしたいのはね、なんとそれがね、ちょっと形を変えて日本でまた別のものが生まれたんですよね。So this was a start of a, localization, if you like, or particularization. This other variation, appeared in Tokyo. Mosburger was the Japanese version of a fast food hamburger chain. But it was not just that they copied McDonald's. They introduced a new variation, which was teriyaki burger. And that was very significant because it was at the same time globalization, sameness spreading everywhere. But it wasn't just uniformity and sameness. It was variations, diversity started to happen and in the form of teriyaki burgers and other forms of hamburgers throughout the world. And that movement came rather rapidly. This is another example of a hamburger outlet in Southeast Asia, somewhere, I think Malaysia, where they started selling samurai burgers and all those things. Now, I want to take you back to when it started, 1920s, White Castle in the US. Now, we want to look further back, go back in history and see, these were the first hamburger fast food chains in the form of franchises. But when did the first hamburger, when did it get invented? That's the other historical question. つまりファストフード化する前に、ハンバーガーっていうもの、その食べ物そのものはもっと昔からあったんですね。で、それっていつどこで初めてできたか。これちょっとはしょりますけどね、This is from what year was this? It's the early 20th century. This is in where was this? Let me just check. Yeah, it was in 1904 in St. Louis, Missouri, where they had the World Fair that year. And it was at this World Fair that they started serving hamburgers. And it was very popular by that time, they say. So we know that it was not in fast food form yet, but it was already being served, which meant it would have been served all over the United States by that time. So the food itself was already becoming popular. Now, when was the first hamburger sold throughout the world? そもそも最初に誰があんなものを思いついたか、これがいろいろ歴史的には証明が難しいんですけれども、調べてる人いましてね。一つの説は、やっぱりここだったっていう説がありまして、I don't know if any of you can guess where this, it's a port city, isn't it? Bruno, do you have an idea where this is? It's a port city in Europe.
A port city?
Yeah, it's a big city. It's along the sea. And it's one of the places where some people say the first hamburger was invented.
I'm not sure, but from the picture, it looks like something like in England, but I don't think it is.
Well, guess what? It's Hamburg.
Okay.
ハンバーガーって名前の由来はドイツのハンブルグなんですけどね、皆さん。でも証拠はないんです。いや、ドイツじゃなくて、アメリカのなんていう町だったら、うちのひいおじいさんが作ったんだっていう人が何人もいて、これ都市伝説がいっぱいあって証明はできないんですけどね。しかし、やっぱりハンブルグもその有力な説の一つになって、1891年にオットー・クワーズさんという人が作ったというのが一つの説です。これなんでこんなことをお見せしてるかっていうと、これものすごくね、こういろんな形変えて、それでそもそもそのハンバーグ以前に、パンに挟むのはハンバーグですよね。だけどパンは挟まないでいいけど、ああいうひき肉を焼いて食べるっていうこと自体はいつ始まったか。ね。実はもっと遡っていきますとね、ひき肉を焼いて食べる風習は19世紀ヨーロッパでもすでにあったんです。その前は焼かないで生で食べてた時代もあるんですね。で、ヨーロッパの人は今でもタルタルステーキとかつって、So Bruno, you know that in Europe many people eat minced meat, raw minced meat, don't they? They call it tartar steak. It's not very familiar in Japan, but
yeah, actually it's true.
Yeah. So going back in history, there was a time when, maybe late 19th century, the first people started to put minced meat on, in buns. Before that, people used to eat hamburger steaks. Even before that, people started eating meat in raw form. And that, so according to some studies, they say that started in the 13th century by some tribesmen in Tatar, the Tatar tribe people in Mongolia, things like that. So what I'm trying to show you here, I'll show you the English version. we see this very long-term historical cyclical movement where you have many stages of changes. First people start to eat raw meat on horseback, and then Europe, Tata steak spreads, and then somebody starts to fry the steaks, and then somebody thinks of putting them in a bun, so that, and then, advent of hamburger and all that, and then franchise fast food starts to take place, and then variations of that come out. So you see the idea. It's this cyclical movement where many stages are repeated, stages of particularization and then stages of universalization. Okay? ちょっと難しくわかりますなんとなく。はい。厳密に理解してもらう必要ないですよ。なんかね、長い間にはいろんなものがこう多様化が進む段階と確一化が進む段階とかこう順繰りに繰り返すと。永続的に繰り返すかもしれません。これでだからそうするとね、大きく言うと進化のプロセスなんですね。So overall, this is a big process of evolution, if you like. But it's not just a straightforward linear evolution. It comes in, in leaps and bumps, if you like. And there's a cyclical movement, which is an alternation of particularization or diversification, if you like, and universalization or uniformization, if you like. Okay, I hope you get the sense. The localization cycle as seen in the historical evolution of the hamburger. So that's just one example. But maybe this example can be generalized to other cultural forms, not just food or items for people to eat, but other general human practices, human artifacts, even practices, customs, cultural, social, political, economic, even. You see, lifestyles even, or social norms, if you like. So this basic pattern, a cyclical pattern of evolution may or may not, but it may at times apply very generally to social processes. You see the idea, okay? Now, where are we getting to now? The other thing I'd like to share with you is this, okay? Any questions up to now? So we've seen, we're supposed to be looking at globalization and in this class, as well as the development into the concept of globalization. And then I've sort of broadened the story into social evolution in general, or cultural evolution in general. But that, of course, was about our own society, our international society, if you like. But now I'm showing you this text, which comes from an entirely different area of study. And I'd like you to take a minute or two to just read it through in English or Japanese, whichever you like. And just think about what, I'll tell you that this is just one chapter from a famous book. I'll let you know that later. But I'd like you to think of, or just guess what this is all about, what this chapter is talking about. Okay? 1分ぐらいちょっと読んでみてください。何のこと言ってんのか。And of course, the key words, I underline the key words. There's 3 of them. Please think about what it means. The first key word is replicator. 複製詞って一体何のこと言ってんだろうと。はい。 なんとなくわかりました。何のことだなと思った人、誰でもいい、手を挙げて。わかる人います？石丸くん、なんか想像つきますか？
その何のこと、どういう意味かってことですか、この文章。
何でもいいんですよ。何のことだろうと、さっぱりわかんない。あるいは、こんなことを話してるのか、なんかわかる人いません？
なんかグローバル化のことを言ってるのかな。
いや、じゃないんですよ。グローバル化じゃないんですよ。およそ関係ない話、分野の、本なんです。誰でもいいですよ。片岡さん、見当つく？
うん。なんかさっきのハンバーガーの話だったら、元のオリジナルがあって、どんどんなんか、より良
あ
くなっていって、最後は一番いいものが残るみたい
なかなか鋭いですね。ハンバーガーに、さっきの話にちょっと当てはまるんですよね、これね。そうなんだ。だけど、別にこのオリジナルの文章は全然ハンバーガーとは関係ないんですよ。うん。複製詞ってなんだろうと思う。What does this author mean by a replicator? 具体的には何ですかね？ジョスリン、do you have an idea what this author is trying to tell us? What he's referring to as a replicator? No idea? 誰でもいいですよ。答え言いましょうか。This author is talking about the gene. You know what a gene is, 遺伝子です、遺伝子。皆さん、遺伝子って知ってますよね。要するに我々の体を構成している、我々だけに生物の進化の根底にあるものですよ。で、科学的には DNA ですけど、He's talking about the gene, which lies at the core of, biological evolution. And this is from a very famous book called The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins. 利己的遺伝子という本がもう40何年か前に書かれた本なんですけどね、これとても世界的に有名な本で、そのご紹介する前にね、この文章のそのキーワードに、さっきハンバーガーのことちょっと連想したって言ってくれたのは、とてもいい思いつきで、複製詞はハンバーガーだって置き換えたらね、なんとなくさっきの話につながるでしょ。ね。コピーを際限なくっていうのは、それはもう世界中でハンバーガー毎日何億個も作ってるから、たくさんコピーができると考えるわけですね。コピーの過程ってだから量産プロセスですよね。So you can substitute hamburger for the word replicator, and then the copying process you can substitute with probably the process of mass production of hamburgers, right? And then a few lines after that, he talks about new tricks. You can substitute maybe a new type of hamburger with a new flavor, which becomes a hit. Becomes the choice of many consumers, like the teriyaki hamburger, if you like. So a new variation to the common product. And so this, I was surprised myself when I came across this paragraph. It's about biological evolution, but it very strangely fits very almost exactly to the process of the evolution of the hamburger. So it's a famous book by this gentleman, Richard Dawkins. I don't know any of you have heard of him. He's still in his he's very active still in his late 70s. He was a professor at Oxford for a long time, and he wrote many books, but this is the book he wrote in 1970 something, 76, I think it was. It's a phenomenal, it's a very famous book, probably the most influential book of fiction, non-fiction of the 20th century. It's that kind of book. You should read it actually if you have the time. Now, but that was an aside rather. I just wanted to give you an inkling of how this whole discussion about globalization with the other notion of localization, that links up with the broader notion of cultural evolution, and through which it even links up and comes out as a very similar structure, actually almost exactly the same kind of dynamic structure as biological evolution. Okay. Now, so we come back to our, there's a social science class mode, and to ask you to look at this debate, two debates actually. で、来週と再来週、皆さん、2回ディベートやっていただきます。もう発表会なしです。もうディベート2回。で、さっき、出した2つのメインクエスチョン、グローバル化はいいのか、そうしていいのか悪いのか、2番目は多様化がより進むのか、確一化がより進むのか、その2つの根本的なディベートなんですね。で、as you see, it's not just a debate. I just put in 2 rounds of reports as well, and then 3 rounds of debate for each session. So you have in total 20 slots here. And I'd like to ask those of you who've done debates only once so far. I think most of you have done debates twice. 大半の人2回やったと思いますけど、確か1回だけの人が石丸くんと林さんだったと思いますがね。その2人は、できたらこの2回ともこの3、4、5のどっかディベートのどちらでもいいです。選んで入れてもらえますか？そうするとキャッチアップできますから、ディベートの回数。いいですか？石丸くんと林さん。あと大半の人はね、2回だけだったと思うんですけど、1人ね、ブルーノ君は1回、3回やりましたよね。So, Bruno, I think you've done debates 3 times already. So, perhaps you can kindly choose one of the reporting slots this time. Okay.
Yes, but I'm missing something like reports. Like I have to do like a research or.
Yeah, please do some research. So, for example, if you choose the first debate and the good team, that globalization is overall good, please report on examples or actual facts based on important developments of facts, making the argument that it's overall good, and vice versa for the bad team, and similarly for the second debate. So reports must be based on actual research and facts.
I understand.
Right. And the debate, of course, has to be a debate, right? いいですか？で、あとの大半の人、13人は、ディベートすでに2回やってますが、できるだけね、まずもう1回、どっかのディベート、2回のどっかのディベートを選んでください。で、それで、埋まると思いますけどね、もし、ディベート埋まっちゃったら、レポートのどっか選んでくださいね。そういう順番で皆さん記入してみてください。まず石丸くんと林さん、できたらディベート2回選んでもらえますか？はい。それで決めときましょう、2回とも。で、残った人はそれぞれ審判やってもらいますので。はい、どうぞ、どんどん書き込んでください。So please fill in your names.
今多分スマホでやってて書き込めなくて、ちょっと書いていただきたいんですけど。
ちょっと待ってね。
はい。
ごめんなさい。僕ね、一番自分で書くのはどうしたらいいか。はい。今話した人、誰ですか？
石丸です。
はい。
石丸です。
石丸くん。はい。じゃあちょっと待ってね。どこ選びますか、まず。
まず1つ目のディベートが4番のグッドの方です。
4番グッド。はい。石丸くんね。
はい。
もう一つは
ディベートの方が、2番の方がディファレンス。
ディファレンスの、ディベート 4番ですか？じゃあまた。
そうですね。
4番ね。
はい。ありがとうございます。
はい。あと、手伝っ ってほしい人いますか？いいですか？はい。まだだいぶ空いてますよ。どんどん皆さん、まだの人、書いてください。ディベート2回だけの人も3回目積極的にやってもらったらいいと思います。まだね、この2回のディベート終わって、まだ最後のテーマでまたもう1回ディベートありますがね。まだ3つスロット残ってますよ。はい、ぜひ、はい、お願いします。まだ全然書いてない人、あれかな。はい、最後、もうワンスロット。残った人誰かどうですか？北村さんとか中西君はもう、ハセムネスチーム入ってますね。最後のスロット、セームネスのディベートの最後、誰かいませんか？下南さんどうですか？下南さん今日来てます？ Or maybe there's no one else? 皆さん、あと誰かボランティアいませんか？2回目のディベート、まだ何も取ってない人。そうだね。今日野口さんが休んでるんで、彼女に頼んでおきましょうかね。ちょっと待ってください。はい。なんか、歯医者さんのアポがあって、今日どうしても来れなかったんで、じゃあ、他に希望者なければ、じゃあ野口さんに、その下の5番目お願いしますね。しときます。はい。じゃあ、これ決まりましたね。はい。ちょっと待ってください。これ書きますね。OK。じゃあ、これで、スクリーンショットどうぞ撮ってください。はい。質問ありますか？何か。いいですか？そしたら、来週のディベートに入った10人の人たち、グッドチームとバードチーム、今、打ち合わせ、ブレイクアウトでちょっと簡単にしといてもらえますか？ブレイクアウトルーム開きますんでね、ちょっと待ってね。じゃあ、これ共有停止しますね。で、ブレイクアウト、はい。簡単にルームの名前は G と B って書いてますから、それに入って、次にちゃんと打ち合わせる場所、日時決めといてください。で、あと解散でいいですから、よろしくお願いします。いいでしょうか？はい。じゃあ開きますね。OK, so see you next week. 楽しみにしてます。